Hello friends, and welcome back to Bible class and for another week of News Channel 12. As you know, we have been following Jesus through his life and his ministry from the point of his first miracle to right now. This is what we have been waiting for. This is what it was all about, his death and his resurrection. Before we get started, I want to give a huge shout out to our 4th grade class. You guys did a tremendous job in this week's video. And another shout out to some of the 3rd graders we sprinkled into this video. You guys also did a phenomenal job. To the rest of the 3rd grade class, we'll be reaching out to you for next week's video to participate in. So I know I didn't put this up last week, but today our lesson is really going to come from John chapter 18 all the way through John chapter 20. Now, we're not going to read all of that in class today, but what I do and would like for you to do is to get with your parents and sit down and read that either before you go on to the news broadcast or before we go on to the rest of the lesson, or read it after this video is over. So if you guys would take the time to read that, those are really important scriptures and a lot is in there that needs to be read and learned. So without further ado, let's get started talking about what happened for this week's news broadcast and what was next in Jesus' life, and that was his death and his resurrection. Where we ended in last week's video is Jesus had been arrested and he had been betrayed by Peter. And I think Will ended our video telling us, we'll have to wait and see what happens to Jesus because the Jewish leaders couldn't actually do anything to him. They would have to take him to the Roman leaders of the time, and that would have been Pilate, who was over this area in Jerusalem. So where we start today is that Jesus was going to have to go before Pilate. But the problem is they didn't have a crime to charge Jesus with. He hadn't done anything wrong. Remember, Jesus came to earth and he lived a perfect and a sinless life. And so that was a problem for the Jewish leaders because they didn't have a crime to charge Jesus with. So they just started making some up. And one of the things that they charged Jesus with was being a rioter and trying to turn people against Rome. And the Romans took that allegation very, very, very seriously. If they thought you were trying to cause an uproar in their country, they were going to come in and they were going to squash you like a bug, which is interesting because that actually ends up happening to the Jewish nation. But we're not going to talk about that today. So they take Jesus before Pilate, and Pilate's like, I don't get it. I don't really see what's wrong with this guy. And so, he asked him. He said, okay, guys, so I have this really bad criminal, Barabbas, and then I have Jesus. Which one do you want? I'm going to release one of them. Who do you want? Barabbas was a really bad guy. Barabbas was a rioter and he caused all sorts of trouble and problems. And that's why Barabbas had been arrested, because he was causing a lot of problems for the Jewish people. And he was someone who deserved his punishment. He deserved to be in jail. Remember, Jesus did not. And so when Pilate asked, which one do you want? They were like, give us Barabbas. Give us Barabbas. We want him. Come on, let's go. Give it to him. Give us him. So Barabbas is released. Now, still in this time, Passover is coming up and it's right around the corner. And they don't want to be celebrating Passover and having someone hung on the cross. That's not what they wanted. So Jesus is then sentenced and he is going to be crucified. And that is what happens. And he's put on the cross and he died there for our sins on Friday afternoon. And then 3 days later, we all know the story, he rose again. And he came up from the grave and people saw him. There were so many numerous accounts of people who were eyewitnesses to Jesus being alive after he had died on the cross. And that's kind of where we are today, because a lot of people, when he died, were really upset. They thought, I really thought this was the one. And he was. He did what he said he was going to do. He died on the cross and he rose again in 3 days. And after he rose again, he stayed and he taught more people and he preached. But more importantly, he spent time with his disciples and prepared them for when he wasn't going to be with them anymore. And that's what we're going to learn about in the coming weeks. And we're going to learn about how the disciples handled their life and their teaching and their ministry when Jesus was no longer with them. Hope you guys enjoy this week's video.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us here on News Channel 12. We're continuing the coverage of the trial of Jesus of Nazareth as things continue to get stranger and stranger. To give our viewers a reminder, Jesus was arrested late last night in Gethsemane by temple police. To give us a little more insight into what we can expect, let's bring in our chief legal correspondent, Tertullus. Good evening, Tertullus.
Good evening, and thank you for having me.
You are a retainer as a lawyer for the priest, so we can expect you have a good idea on what their legal strategy might be. Can you tell us your thoughts?
Well, I haven't worked on this Jesus case since he was just arrested a few hours ago, but realistically, I wouldn't expect much to happen for a couple of weeks.
Why is that?
Well, Jesus has become a pretty high-profile figure, so the priests will have to be careful how they handle this, since many people in town, but they are really good at managing the people. Plus, legally, they will have to press charges against him to Pilate, and today starts Passover, so I would imagine that they'll have to wait 8 days for the feast to be over.
But if they take him to Pilate, what law will they say he has broken?
From what I understand, the priest's main issue is religion, and Pilate won't care about that, so I guess they'll have to make something up about tax evasion or Jesus trying to make himself a king and overthrow the Roman government. The Romans don't mess around with that kind of stuff.
But would they even have any evidence of those types of charges?
No, but Pilate is pretty new, so maybe they could find a way to pressure him into saying he's guilty, and Jesus was just arrested a few hours ago, so I wouldn't expect anything to happen quickly. We still have a proper justice system, and there's the other thing on right now.
That's right. Barabbas was recently arrested and convicted for some pretty nasty stuff. He is set to be executed today with 2 other thieves. He should be getting most of the attention right now, since he really deserves what's coming to him. Let's go live to Brenna, who is live at the Praetorium. Brenna, do you have any updates?
Some crazy developments here, as Jesus' trial seems to be over already. But Pilate thinks that Jesus is not guilty, after questioning him for a while. But then they actually beat him. Pretty bad. I guess to try and convince the Jewish leaders that they already did something, but not kill him. I saw you in the crowd this morning. What do you think about this?
Well, this Jesus guy seemed meek enough. But one of the priests came by and told me the truth of this.
What is the truth?
Well, I just got here, but they said that he's claiming to be the Son of God and the Messiah, and that he would start a rebellion against the Romans and try to kill us all.
And did you believe it?
Well, sure. I mean, everybody else started yelling out the same thing.
I heard you crying for Barabbas to be released. Don't you know that all he does for a living is killing and making problems?
Look, I have no king but Caesar. I'm not trying to rock the boat. I think I've said enough.
Unfortunately, we have some breaking news for you. It's about 3 p.m. and we were going to do our live coverage of the Passover lamb being sacrificed. But we have just received word that Jesus Christ has been crucified and has just died on the cross. Additionally, we are receiving strange reports of things happening around the city. The sky went dark. The temple veil was torn from top to bottom. And apparently graves have been opened all over town. The soldiers overseeing the execution have just confirmed by piercing Jesus' side with a spear that he is officially dead. A terrible turn of events for the one popular teacher. I was secretly hoping that he could have saved himself. Good Sunday morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us on this first day of the week edition News Channel 12. It has been 3 days and 3 nights since Jesus was crucified and confirmed dead, but we have breaking news this morning that his tomb has been discovered empty. Our very own Ella has the story.
Early this morning, women mourners were the first to arrive to discover an open grave, which had until today held the body of Jesus of Nazareth. They reported seeing 2 men there who told them Jesus was alive, so why were they looking for him where the dead are?
Sir, can you tell us your name?
You could just call me the other disciple.
Okay, well, how did you get there? What have you seen?
I ran. Actually, I beat my friend here who ran with me. Anyway, we got here and looked inside the tomb, and Mary was right. Jesus was gone. The only thing that was left were the grave clothes that Jesus was wrapped in. They were just neatly folded like Jesus used to do.
What do you think that means? Some people think you may have stolen the body.
I'm not sure what this means yet. I'm supposed to meet with some friends who also follow Jesus later tonight. But no, we didn't do anything. You'll have to ask the other soldiers who were guarding the tomb. Don't be surprised if the leaders bribe them to make up a story and save their own skin.
Fascinating. We are receiving reports of sightings of Jesus alive and well throughout the area. Additionally, families have reported their recently buried loved ones returning home after the tombs were opened 3 days ago. Coincidence? Or is this something like a first fruits of what's to come? Could Jesus of Nazareth have been telling the truth when he said he was the resurrection and life? This reporter is starting to think so. Stay with us to see what happens next. Bye!